Something touched down on the tarmac at Accra's Kotoka International Airport that deserves more attention than it got. A Boeing 737-400 freighter, freshly acquired by Air Ghana and registered as 9GKCT, landed in Ghana in what the Ministry of Transport described as a significant boost to the country's air cargo capacity. It was not the loudest headline of the week. There was no ticker tape ceremony. But what that aircraft represents, when you place it against the backdrop of what is happening to African trade right now, is a move that tells you something important about where Ghana's economy is heading and how seriously one Ghanaian private sector player is positioning itself for the coming decade. Today we are breaking down exactly what this development means. Who is Air Ghana? What is their play? Why does cargo matter more than most people think? And what does this tell us about Ghana's ambitions to become a logistics hub for the entire West African region? Let us start at the beginning. Air Ghana is not Ghana's national airline. That is the first thing you need to understand because there has been genuine confusion about this on social media. Ghana does not currently have a national carrier. Ghana Airways collapsed in 2004 after years of financial mismanagement and failed restructuring. A subsequent attempt, Ghana International Airlines, also shut its doors in 2010. The country has been without a state-backed carrier for over 15 years. There is currently a 10-member national airline task force, chaired by former Ghana Airports Company Limited Managing Director Charles Asare, working to revive that vision, with the government targeting a launch by the first quarter of 2027. But that is a separate story entirely. Air Ghana is a privately owned cargo airline. It is headquartered at the Ghana Airport Cargo Center in Accra, with its main hub at Kotoka International Airport. The company has been in the business of freight, warehousing and ground handling for more than 30 years. It formally became an operational cargo carrier in 2014 when it secured its Air Operator Certificate. Since then it has evolved into what it describes as an integrated logistics provider, combining air cargo services with ground handling and supply chain solutions. Its growth strategy has been entirely private sector driven, no government equity, no state subsidies. That distinction matters. Now, with the arrival of 9GKCT, Air Ghana operates a fleet of 3 Boeing 737-400 freighters. Let us talk about the aircraft itself. The Boeing 737-400F is part of the Classic series, originally designed as a passenger aircraft in the late 1980s before being converted for cargo use. It has built a strong reputation among operators as a cost-effective, reliable workhorse for short to medium-haul routes. That makes it particularly well-suited to the intra-African and regional West African trade corridors that Air Ghana is targeting. You are not flying this aircraft to Tokyo. You are flying it from Accra to Lagos, from Accra to Abidjan, from Accra to Dakar, or from Accra to Johannesburg. And on those routes, a 737-400F is exactly what you need. Air Ghana's CEO Karim Trabulsi has been clear about the strategic rationale. He says the new aircraft will improve delivery timelines, reduce logistical bottlenecks, and strengthen Ghana's position as a regional cargo hub. These are not empty press release words. When you look at the structural problems in West African air freight, they map almost perfectly onto what a dedicated freighter fleet can solve. Here is the core problem. The vast majority of air cargo across West Africa currently moves as belly-hold freight on passenger aircraft. Passenger planes carry bags. They also carry cargo underneath those bags. But passenger aircraft are not optimized for cargo. Their belly capacity is limited. Their schedules are built around passenger demand, not freight demand. And when cargo volume spikes, as it increasingly does under growing trade, passenger-first airlines simply cannot absorb the overflow. Ghana Shippers Authority CEO Professor Ransford Jayampo made this point explicitly when he received an Air Ghana delegation in June of this year. He said many passenger aircraft operating within Ghana and the sub-region often have limited cargo carrying capacity, creating constraints for businesses seeking efficient and reliable cargo transportation solutions. That constraint is real and it costs Ghanaian businesses money. Dedicated cargo airlines exist to solve that problem. They fly when freight needs to fly, not when passengers need to travel. They are configured for maximum payload. They can handle specialized freight that passenger aircraft cannot easily accommodate, including perishables, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing components, and e-commerce goods. And they offer businesses reliability that passenger belly cargo simply cannot guarantee. This matters enormously in the context of what is happening to African trade right now. The numbers coming out of Africa's air freight sector in 2025 and into 2026 are frankly remarkable. African Airlines recorded a 6% year-on-year increase in air cargo demand in 2025. That already outpaced most mature global markets. Then in January 2026, the growth jumped to 18.2%. In February 2026, it hit 21%. That made Africa the fastest-growing air cargo region on the planet for those months. The Africa-Asia corridor alone recorded 41.6% growth in January, marking its 7th consecutive month of expansion. These are not gradual trends. These are acceleration signals. What is driving this? 3 things primarily. First, perishables. West Africa produces significant volumes of fresh produce, fish, and agricultural goods that require rapid transit. Air freight is the only viable option for time-sensitive perishable exports. As production volumes grow and international buyers in Europe and the Middle East scale up their sourcing from the region, the demand for cold chain-capable air freight services is rising sharply. Second, e-commerce. Global and regional e-commerce platforms are penetrating African markets at pace. Amazon is entering the continent. Jumia is expanding its footprint. As online commerce grows, so does the need for last-mile logistics that can handle high-value, time-sensitive shipments at scale. Air cargo is central to making that supply chain work. Third, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. The AfCFTA, which came into formal implementation in 2021, is progressively lowering tariff barriers across the continent. As trade between African nations becomes cheaper and easier on paper, the physical infrastructure to move those goods becomes the bottleneck. Air freight is one critical layer of that infrastructure. Analysts project that AfCFTA will increase intra-African freight demand by 28% by 2030. The region is already beginning to reflect that trajectory. The question is which countries and which private operators will have the capacity in place to capture that growth. Ghana wants to be at the center of that answer. The government has been explicit about this ambition. Transport Minister Joseph Bukari Nikbe, when he welcomed the Air Ghana delegation earlier this year, reaffirmed that resolving operational challenges in the air cargo sector remains a priority, noting that inefficiencies in cargo movement can hinder trade and economic growth. That framing is important. It tells you that the government sees private sector logistics investment not as a peripheral business story but as a core economic development lever. And there is third-party validation that this positioning is credible. Earlier this year, Etihad Airways announced an expansion of its Africa network, adding new routes including Accra as part of what it called investment in high-growth markets supporting increasing connectivity across trade, cargo, and mobility. When a major Gulf carrier puts Accra on a growth list alongside Lagos and Nairobi, it is a signal that the international aviation and logistics industry sees Ghana's capital as a rising node on the African freight map. Air Ghana's June 2026 meeting with the Ghana Shippers Authority was designed precisely to turn that perception into a formal strategic relationship. The two parties are exploring collaboration to strengthen Ghana's air cargo industry and support trade facilitation with the specific goal of positioning Ghana as a leading trade and logistics hub in West Africa. That is not vague aspiration. That is a working meeting between a private cargo operator and the state agency responsible for overseeing the interests of Ghanaian shippers, with a shared agenda to grow the market together. Now, let us be honest about the challenges because they are real. Africa's air cargo growth is impressive, but it remains heavily concentrated. The dominant hubs are Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and Casablanca. Ethiopian Airlines alone handled over 700,000 tons of freight in 2023, making it the dominant cargo carrier on the continent by a considerable margin. Accra is not yet in that conversation at scale. To get there, Ghana needs not just aircraft but the supporting infrastructure around them. It needs efficient customs clearance. It needs cold chain storage. It needs a regulatory environment that makes Kotoka genuinely competitive as a transit and hub airport, not just an origin and destination point. It needs a freight forwarding and logistics ecosystem that can reliably move goods from the aircraft to the final customer. The West Africa logistics market reached $48 billion in 2025. The Africa freight logistics sector as a whole is projected to nearly double over the next decade, driven by AfCFTA urbanization and e-commerce. The opportunity is enormous. But the gap between opportunity and execution in African logistics has historically been wide. Air Ghana's bet is that a reliable, privately run, dedicated cargo airline with local knowledge and regional relationships can occupy a critical position in closing that gap. 3 Boeing 737-400 freighters is not a global fleet. But it is a foundation. And in a region where dedicated freighter capacity at the local level has historically been extremely limited, it is a meaningful foundation. There is one more dimension to this story that I want to leave you with, because I think it matters for how we understand what is happening in Ghana's private aviation sector more broadly. Air Ghana chose to grow through private capital. No government equity. No state guarantees. In an environment where aviation on this continent has frequently been associated with state-backed national carriers that burn through public funds and ultimately fold, Air Ghana represents a different model. It built from logistics and freight handling over 30 years. It earned its air operator certificate through a formal regulatory process. It is expanding its fleet in response to commercial market signals. That is a story about Ghanaian private sector capacity that does not get told enough. When we talk about Ghana's economic development, we talk a lot about government programs, World Bank projects, and policy frameworks. All of that matters. But the quiet, steady expansion of a private cargo airline with 3 freighters operating out of Accra, meeting with the Ghana Shippers Authority to build a logistics hub strategy, is also economic development. It is just happening without a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Ghana's ambitions to be the logistics gateway of West Africa are not new. What is different now is that the private sector is showing up with aircraft, not just proposals. Air Ghana just made its biggest move yet. It will not be the last. If you found this analysis useful, please like and subscribe. Share this video with anyone following Ghana's economic story. And drop a comment below on whether you think Ghana can genuinely challenge the established African logistics hubs over the next decade. I read every comment and I will see you in the next one.